So, Dave, how you coping so far?
How am I doing? I've done about 4 gigs since March, and I've covered every single room in the house. I've been outside, I've been inside. I'm doing okay. 220 was mental, and now 221 is looking quite dismal as well. Who'd have ever thought we'd be in this? Like, we're going to be in the history books. You believe it?
I suppose first question I'd like to you off with is how did you get into being a comedian? What inspired you to be a comedian?
Well, I never actually decided or set out to be a comedian. Nearly everything I've done in life has always been unplanned. Like, for instance, I started off as a butcher. Every evening after school and all day Saturdays from the age of about 10, I used to work in the local butcher shop around the corner. And that lasted about 3 or 4 years. No, till I was about 16. But I never became a qualified butcher, if that makes sense. So I left school, I did my own leaving, I left, got a job in Extravision, then went into the clothes shop, and then I started in a band. While I was working away in the clothes shop, I had a band and I was the lead singer of the band, and the band were called No Limits. The band was going well, and then in between, say, when guitar strings would break or there'd be a problem with sound or whatever, I'd keep the gig going with jokes. So I'd start telling the audience jokes. And then I used to dress up as people like Tina Turner and Freddie Mercury and Stevie Wonder and do crazy things. And then before we knew it, people were coming to see, the comedy. Uh, but the comedy only came in just to keep the gig going. Like, I thought I'd be a serious singer. But then people were coming to see the comedy more so than for the music. And then I got my own band, uh, and it was Dave Young, and it was a comedy show. But the band, I didn't need a band. I had a four-piece band, and basically all they used to do was play me on and play me off, and then just sit there for the whole gig. And every now and again, I'd go into a song or something if the jokes weren't going well. And then I got rid of the band, and then I became a comedian, and I became Dave Young. So there you go. In a mad kind of way, basically from never wanting to be a comedian, I ended up a comedian. But when I look back on it now and think about it, even in school, I was like the class clown. I was the joker. So it's not like I was, the way people say, oh, he was very quiet and da da da. I
Yeah.
was always a messer. Now I get paid to mess. So there you go. So I suppose I've always been a comedian, but I kind of fell into it by accident.
I want to speak to you about your TV appearances because you've appeared on RTE several times. Probably the one a lot of people would have known you for was your Late Late Show appearance with the Hallelujah cover. Want to speak to me about those?
Yeah. Well, how did it really start? How that came about was we were in a recession at the time, and I heard the Leonard Cohen track Hallelujah, and I just changed the lyrics to Down the Loo, yeah. And I recorded it. It was a funny version, and I sent it in to Jerry Ryan, and he played it on the morning show, and it got great airplay, and he thought it was great crack. And then he interviewed me, and then from that, it went to RTE, gave me a ring and said, "Would you come on and perform it on the Late Late Show?" And I said, "Sure." But I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed TV, and I was on the Saturday night show, and I was doing the warm up, and I was going to be a guest on later that night with Westlife. And in front of Westlife, I'm telling them they're in a boy band, and anybody can be in a boy band. Sure, half of them don't sing anyway. And I'm throwing shapes and all this, and Westlife are doubled up, and they got it in the spirit it was meant. It's great fun. The only TV I'd done before that was I was the resident magician on a program called The Beatbox every Sunday morning with Ian Dempsey. You're too young to remember that, but maybe some of your listeners will remember that. And I used to do magic tricks every week, and they'd all go wrong, but I didn't care. It was funny. It didn't matter. But a live gig really is unreplaceable. Seeing, feeling the audience, sensing the audience, and hearing them laugh and roar with laughter, that's really great.
So yeah, speak to me about your live gigs because you've done several of them. You've done ones in Ireland, some
Several
in
of them. I used
Spain,
to do about
even.
4 a week. I've done 4 gigs since last March. Can you believe that? 4 gigs. And I used
Gee.
to do about 4 a week. Now, there'll be some weeks you do one, there'll be some weeks you do none, but other weeks, but on average, if you average it out, be in around 4 gigs a week. Um, and they're great. I've been everywhere in Ireland. I've been in England. I've been in New York. I've been in LA.
For all those comedy gigs.
Yeah, I've done a lot more than say people know me for. Like you say to most people, Dave Young, they say, "Oh, you're man from the Red Cow." That's because I was there for 17 years. But I have done a fair bit of TV, and I've definitely done a lot of venues, nearly every venue in Ireland, theatres. I've done most of it. Yeah.
So, what would be your favorite venue to go to play in, or a favorite or a highlight of one of the venues you've been to?
The theatre gigs are much easier than a cabaret gig. So a cabaret gig would be like the likes of the Red Cow or the Green Isle, like a hotel room. The gig would start at 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock, and your audience are drinking, say from they're drinking at home before they go out, and then they're drinking, say, from 8 o'clock on. So they're noisy, they're jarred. A lot of people think when you're a comedian, the more drunk the audience, the easier your job is. It's actually the opposite. It's very hard to make really drunk people laugh unless you're doing knock knock jokes. The less drink they have, the funnier and more creative you can be. So you can be really creative in a theatre. The sound is always perfect, the lighting is perfect, and everybody is paid to see you. The audience are preconditioned, they're sober, everything is lovely, and out you walk, and you get a big round of applause from the beginning because here he is and the show is starting. So theatres definitely I would prefer. But in saying that, people can tend to become a little posher in a posh venue than they actually are. And when they become a little posher or a bit more uppity, they can become a little bit more judgmental. So you might say a joke that where they would normally laugh if they were in a hotel room or the Red Cow where they'd be laughing with their mates. But in a theatre, they might go, "Oh my God, I couldn't laugh at that." There's people where in other situations, I know they would laugh at what I just said, but they can't be seen to because they're in a theatre and it's quite posh. So their behavior is different. In a
Yeah.
hotel gig, they're mental, they're wild, and they'll really laugh and they'll go for it. They don't get posh in hotels. They're just themselves. That's the upside. The downside is they can be too drunk, they can be messy. They can like nobody when you're in a theater, nobody's getting up and walking by you. Like I remember once I was doing a show in a hotel, and a guy walked right by the stage, and he says to me in the middle of the show, "Where's the toilets?" Now that doesn't happen in the theater. Stuff like that. Where's the jacks?
One thing I'd like to ask you is that you've met a few times Brendan Grace. So how was he like?
He a very nice guy, a really, really nice guy, a very lovable, warm, naturally funny, great guy. I couldn't say one bad thing, and I doubt you will ever hear any bad things about Brendan Grace. Brendan Grace was a really nice guy. He was like a big favorite uncle you always had. He made you always feel very welcome, and he was always very warm. Really, really nice guy, and it's very sad that he's gone. You know. I went in to see him in hospital when I get this right, on the Monday, and he died on the Wednesday. And when I went in to see him on the Monday, if you said to me, "Jack, well, how's he doing? How long do you think he's left?" I would have said, about a month or two. I didn't think that, having a bit of fun with him that day and having a chat with him, that 2 days later he'd be gone. So that was heavy go. But a really, really, really nice guy. And a brilliant, brilliant comedian. If you can be funny without using bad language, that's really good, you know?
Another thing I want to speak to you about is that you've done a couple of acting gigs before. So what have the acting gigs be like? I remember you're in, what was it? You were in a Live Aid sort of
The movie was called
TV movie?
When Harvey Met Bob. When Harvey Met Bob is the name of the movie. And I got to play in the movie one of my idols, which is Billy Connolly. And I'll tell you a funny story about that. I went for the audition in Windmill Lane to play Billy Connolly. And when I was late, and it was about 7 o'clock when I got there, and all the people that were there to audition as Billy Connolly were like 6'4" biker guys with big long hair and beards. They look like Billy Connolly because you think about Billy Connolly, he looks like a big, Harley Davidson biker type of dude, tattoos and all that. And in I walk, bald, 5'9", and I said, "Oh, I'm here to audition for the role as Billy Connolly," and they were like, "All right, yeah," like obviously. They probably thought, right, well, he's here now. We let him read the line. There's no way. Look at him. That's not Billy Connolly, right? So I looked at the line, and the director said, "So, Billy, a lot of people here today. What do you think of that?" And I said, "It's like a party in our house, And he went, "That's our Billy Connolly." And I couldn't believe it. I was like, "Me?" And he said, "Yeah." And I got the role as Billy Connolly, and they made me up and blah, blah, blah. And if you see me in the movie, I do look a bit like him. But I remember saying to the director later, "How did I get the role?" He said, "Because you have the essence of Billy Connolly. It's all in the eyes." And he said, "I could see Billy Connolly in your eyes." But there you go. So that's how I got the role as Billy Connolly. I was in one of the movies. I'm in The Snapper. That's very funny because I have a full head of hair. I was in Braveheart and The Name of the Father. Loads of extra stuff. What other movies? I was in one called Space Truckers with Dennis Hopper. I don't know. There's a good 20 films I've been in. Loads of, but just extra stuff, I like the movie thing. Long days, though. Very long days. There's a lot of standing around for ages before you're called, and they're waiting on the light to be right and the sound, and it's hard work. People think movie stars, it's a very hard work. Long days. Like some of them work 16, 17 hours a day when they're making a movie.
You're also in a couple of theater. So what was the theater like? The theater acting you did?
That was really good. Now I really like that. I'd like to do more musical theater. I would. It's a great musical called Blood Brothers. I don't know if you've ever seen it. If you haven't seen it, next time it's on, Jesus, next time anything's on, go and see it. I played Fagin in the musical Oliver there for 3 months in the Tivoli Theatre, which is now gone. And I've been in another few bits and pieces. But the theatre stuff, when you're a comedian, you see, and I go on stage and I do a 2-hour show, it's just me talking for 2 hours, and I can say anything I want and I can go off on tangents. But when you're an actor in a role, you've got to say the same lines the same way every time so the other actors can say their lines back. It's called hitting the mark. Although I love playing Fagin and singing the songs from Oliver and all that, it became incredibly boring. So to beat the boredom, what I used to do was, the villain in the musical Oliver is a guy called Bill Sykes. And that was played by an actor who used to be in First City called Paul Rainier. And there'd be a scene every evening where Fagin and Bill Sykes would be saying, Bill would say, "We got to get Oliver back. They've taken Oliver." And I'd say, "Yes, my dear. How will we get him back?" And all this sort of stuff, right? And it was really serious. So to beat the boredom, because we were doing 2 shows a day, and I'm saying exactly the same stuff twice a day. It was like Groundhog Day. I used to get maybe a card, and I would write a word on it, a curse word, and I'd have it inside my jacket. So the audience are over there, so I'd be talking to him, and he'd say, "Are we going to get Oliver back?" And I'd say, "Oh dear." And then I would show him the word under the coat to try and get him to laugh. So that was my way of getting through. And some nights he'd burst out laughing and all that, and I'd say, and then I'd get to improvise, and I'd say, "Now, Bill, this isn't a laughing matter, and we got to get the boy," and all that, and he'd be like, and then in the dressing room later, he'd say, "I'm going to kill you, young, I'm going to murder you." So, yeah.
So Dave, any final words?
Why am I dying? Any final words? Stiddle, fiddle, oodle, foodle. There's a few. There's bonk, bonk, whack, whack, and ding, ding. You ever hear people, Jack, say, you hear it in court a lot, tell us in your own words what happened. And I always think, who has their own words? Like, we all use the words that we all agreed on. Is there people out there with their own words? Tell us in your own words. Stiddle, feidel, oodle, foodle, ding, ding, lapak, whoompo. What are you saying? They're my words. Do you want to hear more? La la boopa. What?